Mercy triumphs over judgment.
Hi, Damia.
Hi, baby girl. How are you?
Very well. Thank you for being a freedom fighter and fighting for this to work. Oh my gosh.
Trust. I wanted to give up a long
I know.
time ago.
But you didn't. You did not.
Only because it's you. Only because it's you.
Oh, we appreciate it
Thank
so,
you so much.
so
We
much.
need more lip gloss and all of that, but that's all right.
Yes, and clearly just your story and message was needed somewhere because this was a battle to get it to work. But
Here we are.
so glad you're here with us. Thank you.
I'm glad to be here.
She gave you an awesome introduction before.
I heard.
Oh,
I
good.
was like, wow, I sound fabulous.
You are.
And because you are fabulous.
Oh,
You are fabulous. So your story is such that you just did not decide that I'm going to just keep doing the whatever. I can't, I won't, no. So you made new paths for yourself and new ways. And so specifically, we wanted to talk about you deciding to have a daughter.
Yeah.
So where do you want to start with your story on that?
Wow. That's a hard decision. I think the issue was, as a child, I always loved kids. Like babies gravitated to me. Like I would walk down the street and random babies just stick their arms out to me and want me to take them. And their mom is like, she never does that. He never does that. But, I just have a love for kids. I work with kids. I've worked, ever since even before I became a lawyer, the reason I wanted to become a lawyer was to help kids. So I've always had a love. But then going to school, as the years went by, I noticed that, I wasn't having a child. And I can honestly say back in the day, the belief was, you wanted to get married.
Right.
You didn't really want to have a child out of wedlock.
Right.
So when you were going to school, your focus was on school. And then after school, your focus was to, pass the bar, get a job. And
that's
then,
a lot of school, by the way. You have a master's degree also, so it was just a lot of school.
A lot of schooling. But I always figured there would be time. And then one day I woke up and there was no time.
That's big.
The time was over.
Yes.
It just seemed like, there's a point that I was supposed to get married. And that fell through, which was a difficult time. The ability to recuperate from that mentally was, was a big thing, because I didn't want to.
So you were trying to go the route.
I was trying to go the route, the traditional route.
Yes.
I really, really was. And of course, working in the system, because I work for the Department of Children and Families, and seeing other people just having babies, you blink, they have a baby. And
on
you're
track,
like, when I'm
on, not shouldn't have babies.
Children having children.
Like, there was one point I even said maybe I should do crack, because they would make me have babies.
That's extreme.
No, seriously, I'm telling you, they're fertile.
Very fertile. They're not stressing, worrying about
That's
bills
what it is.
and worrying about work.
No.
Everything's flowing freely.
Everything's flowing freely. And then one day I woke up and I was 40.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my God, I'm 40. And I have no child. And I have no avenue of seeing where I would get this child from.
So why don't you stop there and just say, I won't have a child? This is my lot in life. It didn't work for me. I even tried to get married. Let me just accept what has been placed, given to me.
Because there's so much children in the system that need families. They need love. And I've seen people with less than me, like, come and get a child and are happy with that child. And there was a point that I was just like, I knew beyond anything that's what I wanted. I just had to figure out, how to get there.
So there was something inside of you that refused to let this go.
Oh yeah, definitely. Every time I saw a baby in the street or heard a baby cry, it's like my ovaries dropped.
Mm.
It's like I
Oh,
knew that's,
yes.
like I wanted to have a baby. And just had to decide how. The decision that when I made it, there was a lot of naysayers like, really? Are you sure that's what you want to do? And because, a lot of these, I hate to say it, but there's some of these kids that come into the system and they have their needs and they have their difficulties. And,
So
do
I
you
have
really
to
want to
admit,
take that risk?
I was one of those naysayers because I also work in the system. Like we see what happens, and a lot of children, they're dependent on drugs. They have been through some trauma.
They have been through trauma.
That is very
And
difficult for you to deal with, and a lot of time, no matter how much you try to pour into them, it's just not enough. Like they can't take it, and
they're hard to bond. It's difficult for them to
difficult
bond. And yes.
And so
And
I just wanted to
you
make
don't
sure
know
you were aware of all of
right.
that.
You don't know their background. You don't know what they're coming from, their history. Like they give you some information, but they can't give you all of it. So you don't know what to expect.
Exactly.
And how to deal with whatever comes. But regardless, I knew I wanted to have a baby.
Mm-hmm.
So I came home one day and I shared the thought with my mother, and who's very important part of my decision making.
And very West Indian.
And very West Indian. And she looked at me like, because of course deep down there's that belief that they want to have their bloodline continue.
But you wanted that too.
Of course I wanted it, but I realized before they did that this wasn't gonna happen.
Not gonna happen.
It wasn't gonna happen. So my first, I decided that I was going to adopt and took the classes that were necessary to adopt. And when I was going through the classes, I realized that most of the kids that they have for adoption up front are those with special needs, older kids. And I didn't think I had the strength to go that route. I wanted to have the baby. Most of the kids who are adopted as babies, they are placed in foster homes as babies. Mm-hmm. And if they come up for adoption, then you can adopt them. Mm-hmm. So I decided to become a foster home instead of being licensed to just straight adopt. Mm-hmm. Which was another difficult decision. But I remember like literally the day that I got my certificate of approval after they did the home study for me to get placed with a child, I got a child. They called me the next day and said, we have a baby for you. Wow. And I was like, okay. Never took care of a baby before, a little nervous. And then the baby came and it was a white baby. Mm-hmm. Dun, dun, dun. Which was shocking in and of itself because they didn't tell me it was a white baby. I remember seeing his little leg and I'm like, ooh, he's light skinned. Then when his blonde hair came out, I was like, oh no.
He's not just light skinned.
He's not just light skinned. And they dropped him off and they're like, oh, he's such a nice baby. He didn't cry. We've had him for a couple hours, no crying. He slept. And they dropped his bags off and they left. And he took one look at me and he started crying. And he cried for 3 hours straight. And I didn't know what to do. I called my mom. I called my friends. I was like, this child is crying and I don't know what to do. Oh my God. Like the only time he would stop is if I got up and rocked him, like hushed him.
Right.
But the minute I would stop, he'd be like, start crying again. I'm like, oh my God.
What did I get myself into?
What was I thinking? This is not a good thing.
Come back and take this child.
Please come back. God. But eventually we settled into a routine and, that little boy, I still love him to death to this point. I had him for about 9 months before he went back home to his mom. And then he came back into care 2 months later. And I was like, oh, no, I don't want him bouncing all over the place. I want him back. But by that time, I had been placed with a child that they were saying I could adopt. So I had 2 1-year-olds that I was raising at one point. And I'm like,
Wow.
when the cup runneth over, it sure runneth
Yeah.
over.
Oh my goodness.
From 0 to
But
2.
0 to 2. But you know, and it was you know, when I had him, it was always an experience because people stared at us wherever we
Oh
went
God.
because they couldn't understand what the heck was going on. What is this, the
She the
nanny?
nanny.
But then I had a really nice car. But the nanny wouldn't be driving such a nice car.
But the
Maybe
nanny
I
sometimes
like,
drives the family car.
Oh my God.
yeah, but they weren't thinking that. There was a lot of questions on their faces. Like, you know, people would come up to us, "Oh, did you kidnap him?" I'm like, trust me, if there's a missing white baby in the world, you would
You
know. The Amber Alerts to your phone
You
would be
understand?
crazy.
If that ain't the truth right there.
But when he went home at 9 months, I was devastated.
Of course.
My
It's a
parents were
bonding
devastated
time.
because they had bonded with him. We had bonded with him, and deep down, we didn't think he was going to go back.
Right.
And then one day we got a call, and they're like, "He's going back tomorrow." I was like,
That's
"Tomorrow?" And when he left, I'm like, I don't think I could do
Put
that again.
yourself through that again.
No. So, but about a month after he left, I got a call that there was a little girl that the court had ordered DCF down here to find a family for. She had been terminated already. Her parents' rights had been terminated, her and her sibling, but the sibling was in an adoptive home and she needed an adoptive home. She was in a foster placement, but the foster placement would foster but didn't adopt. Like, this person has fostered over 100 kids in their lifetime, and what she does is provide foundation and love for them in those formative months or years until they find a family or they get to go back home. And so she didn't want to adopt, but they were looking for a family for her. So I put in my application. I'm like, yeah, I'll at least try. And I went up against about 3 or 4 other families, and I'm like, I'm not going to get it. I don't think I'm going to get it, because these were families, like traditional families, husbands and wives, or husbands and wives with children that was looking to add another child to their family. And
You're single.
I'm a single woman. I don't think that they're going to choose me. But trust me, they told me about her background, or the background they knew about her, and I researched and I looked it up. So when I had to be interviewed, we all had to go in for an interview, separate interview. But I researched her history, like, with what they could give me, and looked up what I would do if this became an issue, what I would do if that became an issue. So when they asked me the questions, I was prepared and to answer. And then about 2 months, I don't even know if it was 2 months, maybe a month and a half later, I got a call and they're like, they chose you. And I was like amazed. I was crying because I was at work when they called. I was crying. My heart was racing. I was just like, oh my gosh. But then I had to do visits because I had to meet her. She had to meet me and see how that went. And she looked at me like,
How old was she?
She's 9 months. She's very. My dad says she's fast. It's damn feisty. We would.
Yes.
Yeah.
But she was 9 months at the time. But she was premature, so they aged her 2 months behind because she was 2 months premature. So she did things behind everybody else. But because I was already licensed, I didn't have to have as much supervised visits as I normally would. But I think I had maybe 2 or 3 supervised visits before they said you can go and pick her up. And I went and picked her up. And
how scary was
that
day?
I don't remember being scared.
Yeah.
I felt more like I was walking into my destiny.
Yes!
Like I wasn't nervous.
She said.
I felt like I was walking into my destiny, into my purpose. And, I went to pick her up. And as I said, her foster mom was amazing. Like, she packed all her things that she had for her. And I put her in my car. And I'm like, from day one, I changed her name. And she responded to her name change. Like, there was no doubt that that was her name. Like, she's like, you know how you start calling somebody a new name and they don't recognize.
Exactly, for a while.
From day one, she knew her name. Wow. And she
don't forget
bonded
to say
immediately
the Facebook name and the name. Like, yeah. Yeah.
Well, this is when I realized that God had really blessed me. Is that because of the line of work that I do, I hate the parents on my cases having the ability to search me on social media and be able to find me, because I have a very unique and distinct name. So if you search that name, you'll going to find me. And so one day, and this is like maybe 2 or 3 years before I got my daughter, I sat down. I'm like, I need to change my name so it's not so easily searched. So I'm like, I sat down and it just came to me like quickly. It didn't take like months or days of thinking. But I changed my name to Damia Gordon Praying for Grace. And I went with that name for years. And then when I got my daughter, and trying to decide what I was going to name her and, what I was going to, I always knew what the first name would be. But, to try to get a middle name that went with my last name and so forth. And initially I thought Jade, I would call her Amaya Jade. And my mother looked at me and she's like, yeah, I think you should call her Grace. I think you could call her Amaya Grace. I'm like, that sounds really good. I'm going to call her Amaya Grace. And then one day, one of my very dear friends, Akoya, said to me, Damia, did you realize that you've been praying for grace and you were granted grace? Woo! Because you've gotten your grace. That's your daughter. And I was like,
oh my God.
Wow. And my mind was blown, like, to the point that I went and changed my Facebook name from Damia Gordon Praying to Grace to Damia Gordon Granted Grace. Woo! And
I love that. I love
and yes,
so listen,
and
write it, make it plain. Write it, make it plain. You don't even know what you were requesting.
I was not. I didn't even realize. Didn't even think it was that deep or that powerful. But I was like, wow. No. And even when I told my mother, she was like, wow. And if you see my daughter, she like there. Trust me, when I had the first child that I had, it was clear he was not from my loins.
Yes.
But when you see my daughter and she acts like me, the things she does, I just look at her and shake my head. I'm like, this is me. This is me. And she looks like me. She looks like my mom. Like, there's no way anybody can walk up to her and say, this is not your child. Wow. And she loves me. And I don't really realize how much she loves me until she does some crazy things. Like, and this is how I would say she's damn faced. Yeah. Like, if my mom is for whatever reason yelling at me, she will come in between us and start yelling back at her. Can't talk. Can't talk one word. But it is very clear. You better leave my mom alone.
Exactly.
Because this is not going to work.
Wow.
And she stands up for me. Like, I don't even have to say anything. She stands up for me and defends me. And she loves her mom. She loves her mom. And I love her.
Amazing.
Like, I can't forget. I can't remember what my life was
without her.
So you said a couple of powerful things that I
feel
just
Stacey exploded.
I'm like, wait. I can't. Okay, so many powerful things, but one of them.
Why does it look like we're live?
I don't know.
Okay.
One of them was first. You were like, you didn't expect to get picked for the application, right?
Mhm.
But in preparation, you went and researched. It
Yeah,
was like you were preparing.
myself.
You were preparing for what you wanted.
Yes.
And they tell you that, just like you said, on that day you were like, it was a destiny move. I was going towards whatever it was. But even in the preparation, you have to prepare for what you want. You can't just, I hope I get toss it in the air. You're like, no,
No.
I'm putting myself out there. I actually want it, so I'm gonna act like
I want it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Do the work.
Yes.
Do the work. That's the work.
And that is obviously, and probably so many other things that lined up, but that was a major facet to say, she can handle what this, this role.
Yeah.
And then you're like, yes, as I'm going there, it felt like I was walking into my destiny. Powerful. And honestly, your whole spirit has been preparing for this just from you writing.
It has.
Yes.
Writing
it.
Like, you know. And
that's
even
so powerful.
So all of that lines up with, just manifesting our destiny. You knew inside yourself this was something you always wanted. And even with that, you had an internal clock for yourself. It wasn't just, okay, yeah, everybody thinks by 40 you can't, but it was your internal clock. So it's like, by this time, I wanted it. Because we just saw Janet Jackson or whoever. No. And it was obviously divine timing and just
clearly
amazing.
Let me tell you, once the decision was made, and this is how you know God is working, is when everything just falls right in line, right? Like there was not one obstacle. There was not one like, oh no, this happened, so maybe I shouldn't.
Right.
There was not any of that. Everything just fell right into place. Everything just rolled into each other, and next thing you knew, she was in my life, and she was there, but she was there with my boy. I had both of them, and trust me, that was a hard time.
Yes.
Y'all can say whatever you want to say about girls, but let me tell you, they're not jumping off beds for no reason. Then they the fact that they
totally two different types of play.
Yes.
You need some energy.
Active boy. And, he came back when he was 11 months, and he left again when he was 18 months and went back home. But it wasn't as devastating the second time. It was sad, but it wasn't as devastating because I had my girl.
Exactly.
I had my daughter. And, you
already grieved too.
And, yeah. And so, I miss him. I still do. Because, we had some false hope that we would be allowed to be involved in his life even after he went back home. But it was clear that he had bonded with us as a family. And, and I think the mom felt some type of way about that and stopped having contact with us.
But we need people for a reason and a season.
Right.
Probably really needed you at the time, and you really needed him at the time.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah. And, I don't want to call him my practice baby, but he was my practice baby.
I know.
And, we learned that we both learned together. We went through it together. And then I got my daughter, and, and she was so different. It was, dealing with her, she was more reserved, more afraid of things. Not, he was just gung-ho. Boy, I will fight whatever battle that comes. And she's like, yeah, that thing looks a little high. I'm not looking off it. But and when he went back home, I had her, and we bonded even more after he left, and she's here, and she's growing so fast. And this is the thing also, when I got her, there were all these doctors. She was going to all these specialists, all these allergies that she had, all the special foods she had to eat, and
things that
I'm telling
you learned
you
about.
I got her
nothing.
Of course I had to follow up, and they just started clearing her. No, you don't have to come back.
Awesome.
No, you don't have to come. That girl doesn't see one specialist now.
Wow.
She goes to her regular
Thriving.
appointments.
Thriving.
She is thriving.
Yeah.
If you look at her, before, when she was 18 months, she was still wearing 6 months clothes.
Mm-hmm.
Now she's 2, going to 3, and I'm putting on 3T, 4T, and she's that girl is solid. She is,
Awesome.
she is like, you can't believe this is the little tiny child that couldn't mash an ant. Like, she is something else, and she is a fighter. She has a very strong personality.
Fighter. You are the freedom fighter. You fought for her. And you can just show her how to fight for life.
Exactly.
Now.
You gave her the fight example, which is
so
awesome.
Your story. We just want to use it to inspire others, but I also think that you have given people an insight as to what it is to really. It's such a scary, like, unknown thing. We don't really know the steps and really what to do with adoption. Mm-hmm. And I think this is huge too, because there are a lot of children out there.
And there are a lot of people that have the idea in their minds, but they're like, oh, it's such a process. They don't even know how to broach it. I don't want to. No, like, you just kind of gave them a quick step-by-step. And honestly, once you make that decision, things kind of just line up. You find the resources that you need.
Like I always told you, babies come with their blessings. They really do. It just kind of figures itself out.
Awesome.
It does.
Awesome. So thank you.
Thank you for your very just awe-inspiring story. I can't even imagine how hard that must have been for you, but just making that decision, like, this is what I want, and I'm going to go through it, and I'm going to do it. And even if I have to do it in a way that goes against the norm.
Mm-hmm.
It's not the traditional cookie cutter 2-family home. You're like, but this is what I want.
This is what I want.
And your bright smile the entire time as you're talking about her, I can tell very much that you do not regret the decision at all.
No. And trust me, don't get me wrong. There are people out there that, like, know she's adopted and treat her differently because of that. And
not all rosy.
It's not all rosy, and it's something that, of course, I'm gonna have to tell her early, because there's somebody that will come and tell her.
Yeah.
That she's adopted, but I want her to know she's adopted.
Of course.
And I want her to know that the love I have for her is not just based on her biologically coming from me, but because I love her and she was destined to be mine. And we take it one day at a time.
Exactly.
And she will keep fighting for me, and I will definitely keep fighting for her.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Oh, that blessed my life, and I'm sure it'll bless others.
Yes.
Thank you so much for sharing your story, Miss Damia Gordon, and I pray.
And thank you. I'm glad this video finally worked. Don't use Prasada's whack Android.
Android forever. Android forever.
Thank you.
All right.
Bye.
I hope you have a great
Bye.
day.
Thank you.
Same to you. Bye.
Did you want to end it something?
All right, guys. Thank you so much for joining us. I pray that story, one of many to come this year, blesses you guys and just shows you that you don't need to meet any specific tailor-made mold. Society likes to give us these instructions that, you have to look like this or be like this or have this degree or whatever it is. Don't be afraid to go after those things that on the deep down inside of you is calling you. It's calling out to you. And her story was in going after the child that she always knew that she was going to have, even without a husband, even without, those traditional means. And that was her story. And we even talked of, who was it? Jamila Glean last year, of her story and how she pursues the things that makes her happy in her day-to-day life. I just want to encourage you guys to go after those things. Don't just settle for the status quo and live, unfulfilled. That is not living a full life. Go for those things that bring you joy every day. Go for those things that will make you feel complete. And I just want to encourage you guys today and always. I'm praying you guys have a blessed week, and we will talk soon. Bye for now.
Mercy triumphs over judgment.